I'd like to talk with you today about a topic that's quite painful for me, and I think for a lot of people, and has to do with male anger. I grew up with a father who was irritable, angry, and depressed. I learned only later in life what was causing the feelings that he had. But at the time, what I noticed as a young kid was there was always tension between my parents. My father often would blow up seemingly out of the blue. Sometimes it would be towards the world. He just seemed to be angry at people, angry at politics. It just seemed like nothing was going right for him. Sometimes it would be directed at my mom, and rarely, but sometimes it would be directed at me. And my mother and I both began to walk on eggshells. We never knew when something would trigger my dad and he'd blow up. And what I learned early on was anger was something that we had to be wary of, had to be afraid of. I had to avoid and do everything I could to keep from doing something that would trigger my dad. Now, eventually, he and my mother got divorced, not so much directly from his anger, but indirectly from what anger was doing inside him and the depression that really was underlying a lot of the anger that was driving him. Now, I grew up, like many people do, saying, I will never be like that. I'll never get angry like my father. And the truth was, the way I thought I could do that was to keep my feelings very controlled and deeply pushed down. And on the surface, I looked very together, very successful in my work, but often at home was where the anger would come out. Carlin and I would sometimes blow up at her. Always in my mind, it seemed to be justified. She seemed to do things that would set me off. And in my mind, I was saying to myself, well, of course I get angry. Who wouldn't get angry when somebody does what she does? From her point of view, she would say, geez, I was just caring. I was just trying to be helpful. I would alternate between, at times, holding back and gritting my teeth and insisting that I was not angry, to at times blowing up, and mostly just, she would describe it as I would get beady-eyed. I would get that look in my eyes, and I would ruminate on the injustices that were going on in my life, were going on in the world. And it took me a long time before I really recognized two really important things. Firstly, that anger really was a problem, that I couldn't continue to just blame my wife or blame the world, that it really was interfering both with my relationship and also just with my general happiness and well-being. The anger really was covering over a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, a lot of depression really that I hadn't dealt with. So I finally got help. I finally reached out and took my own advice as a therapist. Sometimes we have to listen to ourselves and do what we recommend to our clients. I went to see somebody. I learned about my own anger. I'd learned to understand anger in ways that I hadn't before. And one of the things I do when I learn something is I write about them. So I wrote actually two books, one called The Irritable Male Syndrome and another called Mr. Mean, that looked at kind of my own issues and a lot of the questions I got from many women. And what I came to recognize is that anger really is a corrosive expression of a normal, healthy emotion when it is not understood and it isn't guided in a positive way. So what I've tried to do is to put together a lot of the things that I've learned both in my own experiences and in the counseling that I've done with clients over the years. And I put them into what I call my diamond points for dealing with male anger and preventing it from harming your relationship. So if these issues are alive in your life, if you notice them in yourself or in somebody that you care about, and feel like you would like to get some tools, some real specific, finely honed from a lot of experience help, I encourage you to send for these diamond tips. At the bottom of the video, you can get directions on how to order them. And I'd very much like to make them available to you and feel that you're going to find some real significant value in these. I hope to stay in touch with you and hope they help.